Hi, and welcome to today's lesson on arrays. We're going to be continuing on from our previous lesson where we're going to be exploring data structures. Before we start to use arrays, we need to understand why we need them. So if we were to think about a variable and storing data in a variable, we can only really put one particular value, whether it's an integer, string, or any other data type. So this can cause us problems in instances where we have a program where we might need to store multiple instances of the same variable. This is where arrays come into place. As you can see in the example, we've got name1 is equal to James, name2 is equal to Chris, and name3 is equal to Harry, and so on. And this can go all the way up to name10. Now with this method, obviously we can see that it's a time constraint on it, and it can become very difficult to manage the data. Say if we had a program for a school and there's hundreds of names, how could we necessitate this without taking a lot of our time and data in the program? So this is where an array will be useful to us. And now let's look at how to declare one. So as we mentioned, it'll be more effective for us to use an array, as an array serves as a data structure that can accommodate related data of a similar nature. Now, as a concept, you can imagine an array as a set of boxes, okay, and they each have an index referred to a particular element, okay, and this index is a position and it holds a particular value. It's important for us to know also that all data within an array must adhere to the same data type. So you can't have one data type of an integer and then in the next element of the array you have a string, you'll get an error. Now we've got an example below of names, okay, and we're using an array to hold the different values of names. So for instance, we've got 9 different values, starting with the first index as 0, so name 0, all the way to name 8. And if we count that up, that's 9, and each of them have their own respective values. So in order for us to declare an array, we need to have an identifier. So this is just like with a variable, an identifier is the name that we want to give the array, and the size denoting the number of elements in the array. So below we can see an example. We have array name 9 that will tell us that we have 10 elements indexed from 0 to 9. It's also important to understand in different programming languages, this declaration can vary. We will be looking at an example in Python later on. When we want to assign values to an array, we need to reference the element's position to make it very clear to the computer where that value is going to be stored in the array. So if we look at the example, we've got name 0 is equal to Jim. That's telling the computer that the first value with the index 0 will have the data Jim stored in it. Now it's key to note for us that we can overwrite the elements as we go along in the program, assigning a new value, or in some cases also removing it. Now, in order for us to retrieve the value of an array when we're printing out to the console, we need to make a reference to the index. So as you can see in the example, we've got the command print name and then the reference to the index 7, which will give us the 8th value in the name array. What we're going to do now is we're going to look at some practical examples of how to use an array. We'll also look at the methods we can use when using an array to utilize its usefulness. So we're now looking at an instance of an array in Python. Now it's key to note in Python, we don't actually have arrays, we refer to them as lists. And this is a different data structure, but with the same functionality of an array. For the purpose of your GCSE, we don't really need to go into the nitty-gritties of the differences, but I thought it's key for you to know. So as you can see, I've created a list with the name sentence, and then we've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 values. This actually is 5, as we know, because 0 holds value in computer science. Now, if you can see, I've got this print statement here for the 0th element, then the first element, the second element, the third, and the 4th element of the list sentence. So let's run the program now and see what happens. As you can see, we've printed off each element one by one, and it allows us to inspect the array on an individual basis, but also look at how we can declare an array and what we can do with it. It's also key to know that we can actually use a loop to explore an array also. So I'm just going to comment some of this out so that we can focus on the loop program. So now we're going to focus on this loop. So using our knowledge from previous lessons, we've got a for loop, and it's going to be in the range of 0 to 4. and then we're going to print the sentence with the index. Now the index is going to hold the value of the counter. So this should allow us to inspect the whole array without having to write print statements again and again. So as you can see, we've got the quick gray fox. So we don't actually have all the values. Why? Because we've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the value of the loop finishes before the fourth value. So we need to change this to 5. If we run this now, let's just delete the previous console logs to see what happens. So there we go. We've got the whole array using a loop, and we're utilizing our knowledge from previous lessons to not only write efficient code, but also save memory in the computer. But we're now going to look at some functions we can use to help us with arrays and lists. So now you can see that we've got an inventory list, but it's empty. Now we've got the keyword called append. Append allows us to add a value to the list as we're going along, rather than initially declaring it. We've appended torch, then we've appended gold coin, and we're using the identifier inventory to allow the computer to know where it's going. And then we've got key. Then we've got one to remove the items from the list. So it's nice and simple. We've got inventory.remove, and it removes the gold coin. You can also sort this, and then by sorting it, we'll go into alphabetical order. And then finally, we can output all the items in the list. So let's run this and see how it goes. So we've got key and torch. We had the gold coin, but we removed it. So I'm going to append some more values just to show you how we can sort it better. I'm just going to copy and paste it 3 times and change the values. So let's call this alpha. Just a value for A. A lot of typos happening today. And then let's call this zebra. And then let's call this one. And then let's call this one sun. So if we run this now, let's see what happens. So as you can see, we've got everything in alphabetical order. We've been able to use a variety of functions that allow us to utilize arrays in a list, in this case for Python, a list, to the best way possible. And then finally, we've got a loop that's going to uncover exactly what's going on. So that's an idea of how to use a single array data structure. And we've just looked at some examples in Python. We hope this lesson has been beneficial for you to understand why we use arrays, the purpose behind them, and how to actually implement them. Thank you for watching the lesson. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you at the next one.